It's a Week 17 edition of NFL Power Rankings, and it is presented by Energizer. Almost feels weird to say Week 17. This thing has gone by quick. Along with Eric at home, Mike Am with you. A complete list of all of Eric's work, all 32 teams, and analysis of every single one of them. All you have to do is scan the QR code if you are watching us, and check it out on NFL.com. Eric, before we even get into these rankings, because there was a shakeup here in the top half of the rankings, which isn't a surprise considering some of the results that we saw in Week 16. This playoff chase and to lock in a spot in the postseason, this thing is heating up, man. It's pretty dramatic.
It is. And what's interesting, Mike, is it's more about we kind of know who's going to get in the dance this year, right? There's still some things to figure out in the NFC South, a couple teams with some long odds to get in. But the positioning, everything could change at a moment's notice. One game, one loss, one win could really shake everything up. Just look at the Rams, look at Denver. We'll get into all these teams, but everything's still up for grabs.
Yeah, the NFC West alone is just really compelling because you got three teams that are all in the mix for the number one seed in the NFC. And Chicago fans, trust me, I get it. You're also in the play as well. The point is, it really is going to get crazy. Here are the rankings 1 through 8. I see a large mover at the bottom there. We got Seattle. Now your new number one. We got the Patriots following them. The Bills, who just figure out ways to get it done. The Broncos, I think we all felt really good about, but they lose that game to Jacksonville. So the Jags now at 5. The Bears at 6. Niners move up a spot after a Monday night win to 7. And we got the Rams, a free fall to the 8th position. We'll talk about them in just a moment. All right, you got Seattle as the number one team. They are the team of the week presented by Truist. Break this down for me because you go and get a win when you are trailing. They're at home. I think the questions around Sam Darnold need to be sort of silenced here because in a world where it's show me, not tell me, he showed everyone he can win a clutch game.
Yeah, let's obviously point out the fact he threw a couple picks that looked to put them in a position where they were going to lose this game. Things were not looking good. And then all of a sudden he cranked it up with one of his best stretches of the season, of his career. So it was important to get this punt return touchdown, Rashid Shaheed. That, in my mind, kind of flipped the game, gave Seattle a chance. But look at Darnold, dialed in, making some tough throws in small windows. The touchdowns, the 2-point conversions, really was in command there at the end. Look, is this a career-defining performance? We'll see. He's still got the playoff demons to get off his back. He's got a lot more work to do. But, I felt a little dirty moving him up after giving up 581 yards and 3 turnovers, none for the Rams. There are a lot of sketchy moments in this game, but Seattle's found a way to endure in these situations. They do have a mental toughness and a grit and firepower in all 3 elements of the game that you can't overlook.
Yeah, two-point conversions late in this game. I don't know if the Rams come up with one of them. I don't know if you drop them all the way down to where you did, which is that 8th position. It is kind of crazy. I know it sounds like you were hesitating putting Seattle in that one spot. You got the New England Patriots right now, right behind them at number 2. Was there a conversation mentally in your head that said, you know what, getting a win against a Ravens team, an opportunity to clinch the AFC East in Week 17 against the Jets, could they have been your number one?
It could have been, right? You don't really want to get too deep into the conversations in my head. Trust me, Mike, it's ugly up there, especially this season. Everything's been sort of mixed up, and we don't really know who's great, who's good, who's solid, and all that. But look, the way Drake May played in the fourth quarter, especially with no Travion Henderson out there, 2 offensive linemen out, just kept delivering haymaker after haymaker and really performing at a high level. Granted, no Lamar Jackson, so it was a little easier on the other side of the ball. Defense was up against it earlier, but the Patriots did get enough stops eventually. And look, they're going to get Milt Williams back. They're going to get Will Campbell back and other players as well. So I am confident they're going to be a little more fortified in the lines of scrimmage. But Mike Vrabel has this team believing, and they find ways to win, even if the cards aren't all perfect. So got to give them credit for that. Obviously, this year's been sort of the year of the double-digit comeback, and they were the latest to do it on Sunday night, a huge victory.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the Ravens and the predicament that they find themselves in coming up here on Power Rankings. Once again, this is a Patriots team that clinched their first playoff berth since 2021, which is just wild. Moving on to number 4 right now, we got a Denver Broncos team. Eric, I think this is more of a function of the Jags being better than we thought as opposed to Denver struggling. And trust me, there were some struggles on the defensive side because Jacksonville obviously had their way on the offensive side of things, giving up 34 points this Denver defense. How concerned are you that I don't know. I'm like, maybe there is a little bit of an issue here. Or do we just say, hey, tip the cap and give respect to Trevor Lawrence?
Yeah, I think all season long we've sort of relied on the fact, hey, look, Denver has a top 5 defense. They can play like the best unit in the NFL on any given day. But that wasn't the case. Played well early, played well late, but everything in between was all Jacksonville. All with ease, making big plays in the pass game. 61-yarder to Parker Washington, longest play the Broncos have given up this season. So it was just shocking to see that. And then offensively, obviously, kind of the self-inflicted errors, the poor exchange there, kind of a gift fumble from Bo Nix and company. Not enough consistency and none of that fourth quarter magic that has kind of defined their season. So, again, they'd won 11 in a row. They lose one game. It did happen at home, but it felt like to me a divisional round playoff game. And the fact that they didn't stack up and didn't have enough answers at the end of the game was a little bit surprising. They had opportunities, but couldn't cash in on them. So just sort of a brief pumping of the brakes on the Broncos. Still think they have a viable club, but, should serve as kind of a wake-up call a little bit.
Okay, so I got to imagine once the show hits air and it gets released on social media and people start dissecting your rankings, they're going to say, well, Eric, you got a Broncos team sitting at number 4. The team that just beat them on their home turf is Jacksonville at 5. Why not flip-flop them?
Yeah, it's a good case, to be made for Jacksonville the way they're playing right now. Obviously, it's been really impressive. I think a lot of people have kind of slow played them a little, wanting to see that big victory. Well, you got it on Sunday. And look, Trevor Lawrence, you can say whatever you want about him. I think he's playing at a level at or perhaps even a little above what we saw down the stretch in the 2022 season. That was the year they had that big comeback against the Chargers in the playoffs, gave the Chiefs a game the next week in the postseason. We thought it was a franchise on the rise. It's taken now 3 years to get back to this point. And Lawrence has faced plenty of criticism along the way, but even with Travis Hunter out, they found weapons in the pass game. Brian Thomas has sort of come back into the fold a little bit, but more Parker Washington, more Jacoby Myers. They don't have to run the ball to have success. And when Lawrence is making these kinds of plays, they're dangerous, man. So yeah, who's to say they can't win a Super Bowl? I think the Broncos' overall resume is a little bit stronger, and that's why I didn't flip the 2. But hey, I understand the criticism, and folks can update their personal rankings that way, because it wouldn't shock me if it ends up that way.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think you described it really well. The total body of work. The reality is it is more impressive from a Broncos side of things, but the Jags right now, you talk about peaking at the right time in the season, they look the part, and I think once the playoffs begin, the Jacksonville Jaguars are maybe on the short list of teams that you don't want to play, and I would have made the case for the Houston Texans, but after what we saw this past week, I think the Jags might be that squad. Keep in mind, Jags, they go on the road and they take on a Colts team that needs a whole lot of help to find the playoffs. Time for Future Champions. It is presented by FanDuel. Take a closer look at the odds to win the NFC here. We got the Rams still the favorite at plus 250. Not far behind are the Seattle Seahawks at plus 310. The Eagles, the Niners, the Packers, and the Chicago Bears in that order to go and win. I'm almost surprised here. Chicago is at plus 800 right now when you consider some of the wins that they have gotten. Now, they match up against the San Francisco team on Sunday Night Football, a meaningful matchup for both of these squads because both teams right now in play for a number 1 seed in the NFC. Can you imagine, by the way, if the Bears are a 1 seed and the road to a Super Bowl goes through Chicago? Like, that would be insane, because we always talk about weather games and what this could mean. But sell me on Chicago right now. Are you buying them as a real Super Bowl contender?
Well, listen, when they find themselves down with 2 minutes to go, the other team should be very, very, very scared, because that's when they're at their best, kind of, finding a way. I'm, obviously being a little tongue-in-cheek here, but Caleb Williams, the Iceman, he's earned that nickname with some clutch performances. There's no better scene from last week than him slipping his hands into the hand warmer before DJ Moore even caught that bomb. Make a throw, slip the hand in, Moore catches the touchdown. That's how cool this guy is, and that's how clutch this team has become. So, it's rare for teams to have this quality. They're plus 21 in turnovers, minus 3 in the 4 losses and plus 24 in the 11 wins. So it gives you a road. They're able to get those extra possessions and have those extra opportunities to win games. Still needed about 9 big things to happen against Green Bay to pull it off. That's why I didn't bump them up. All 9 hit. They hit the inside straight. Not everybody can get that. Won't always work out that way. But again, this Bears team, kind of like we said with the Jaguars, where you got to stop disrespecting them. You have to realize that this team finds a way to win, and Ben Johnson has instilled incredible confidence in this club right now.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the Green Bay Packers coming up in just a bit here on Power Rankings, because I think they're worth a conversation with Jordan Love also going down. And you mentioned what this Bears team needed. They needed to figure out Malik Willis, who I thought actually played some good football. Keep in mind, Bears, Niners, Sunday Night Football. So keep in mind, 5th best odds right now for the Chicago Bears to win the NFC. Speaking of this Niners squad, one spot right behind them at number 7. I don't know if, well, I was about to say if there's another guy that should be in front of Kyle Shanahan for Coach of the Year, and actually right off the top of the dome, I can name some other guys that should be in that mix. The point is, navigating some of these injuries, they have done a remarkable job. They're right in the thick of this. Brock Purdy looking like the old Brock Purdy here, not the one that was a little inconsistent coming off of that turf toe. Just how dangerous is this team?
Yeah, that offense is an absolute buzzsaw. You know, when they're on, they're at their best. And I think Sunday night was, or Monday night, I should say, was as close to we've seen them at perfection. So put up 41 points without Ricky Pearsall and other players. I mean, we'll see if the George Kittle injury ends up being anything serious. But hey, he had a big night, and obviously other guys, Tanja stepped in as well. You know, the defense still has its warts, right? When we've seen them kind of play those upper tier offenses, they've had their issues. You know, Phillip Rivers did throw for some yards against them, did keep it close, almost matched them score for score. But Purdy was on career night, 5 touchdown passes, did open the door slightly late with that pick, but you know, that was one of the few possessions which they came up empty. So, you know, again, this season sort of seems to be about respect, right? And the Niners usually get it, but they're in this position where the injuries, people sort of have this impression of them, like there's a ceiling to what they can do. I'm guilty of that too, and I've said that all season long. I just don't know if this defense is good enough. If they can play as well as they did against the Carolina Panthers defensively a few weeks back, that's the kind of team that absolutely can make some Super Bowl type noise.
Well, I think to your point, and I watched the press conference when it was over from Brock Purdy, he had some significant things to say about the expectations for this season and the real conversations Kyle Shanahan had with this team, that they were going to have to gut things out. It didn't look necessarily rosterized with some of the turnover and some of the injuries like previous Niners teams, but it doesn't matter. It's a brand new year, and getting hot at the right time might be the case for them, because I don't know if they are as complete, let's say, as the Rams, for example, in this division, who seem like they have it on both sides of the football. Let's focus in on Sean McVay's team here. They go and they lose against a Seattle squad. To me, I'm just not that worried about them. Now, I know they're still in the mix for a 1 seed. I don't know. I know we flashed the odds before. I feel like they're still the best team in the NFC.
Yeah, and I want to explain this ranking carefully, right? I mean, I have to set this up so people aren't saying, why did you drop them 7 points? If they make one more stop, they win that game, right? I completely understand that. On the road in a short week, they played very well for most of that game. But their path could be a lot harder right now. They're currently the 6th seed, which is kind of amazing. Could play at Philly, at Carolina, 2 places that they've lost games this year. Again, I'm with you. I think the Rams still have the firepower, and you know, my ranking the last several weeks, them at number 1 has reflected that. I think they have the ability to go win a Super Bowl. Well coached, MVP quarterback, you know, all these different elements, a pass rush. I think they've got the ingredients. The firing of special teams coordinator Chase Blackburn, though, tells me there's a real concern, right? They made some mistakes in that facet at the end of that game, helped kind of sort of get the ball rolling for Seattle to come back. Is that going to change everything? Would they have fired him had they won the game, right? These are all questions that I have swirling around in my head. So a little bit of internal strife right now and a loss that really crippled them in the standings. That's why the big knockdown. They absolutely are one of the teams, and I don't think there's much separating 1 through 8 or even deeper than that right now. They're one of the teams that can win it all, but the cracks are just starting to show a little bit, and it's sort of reflected in where they're going to end up in the rankings if the 49ers and Seahawks continue winning.
I will say this, over the next 2 weeks of games, they get Atlanta and then they get Arizona. You compare that to what Seattle's dealing with, what the Niners are dealing with, what the Chicago Bears are dealing with. Like, I think there's still a path right now for this team to continue to rise, not just in the NFC standings to try to solidify a number 1 seed, but also on your list of the top 32 teams as we dissect the power rankings. Speaking of this list, Aaron Rodgers and the Steelers, they keep finding ways to get it done. An important win against the Lions in a wild finish. I think it might be time to start giving some respect to Rodgers and this Pittsburgh team. Where do they land on the rankings? That's next.
Power Rankings is brought to you by Energizer. Still going.
Back here on Power Rankings, Eric's teams 9 through 16. The Chargers locked up that postseason spot sitting at number 9. The Texans, we'll talk about them in just a moment, finding a way to get it done. It's the Eagles, the Packers who fall 3 spots to 12. The Steelers have won 3 straight at 13. Carolina, maybe winning that division. And then they got the Lions and the Baltimore Ravens at 15 and 16, still scratching and clawing to try to find a way to make it into the playoffs. The Houston Texans, a week ago, Eric, we're having these conversations. I'm thinking, hey, they might be the team that no one in the AFC really wants to play because of that team's defense. Offense looked like it started to get it going, but the Raiders almost beat them. What's the panic right now around this team?
Yeah, it's hard to figure exactly where they fit in. Obviously, like they'd been a hot team coming into this game, but this was a strange one. The Raiders gave plenty of good effort in this one and could have beaten them with a few more plays. So surprising to see them get beat, especially by Ashton Genty, both through the air and on the ground. This is a defense that sort of prided itself as one of the best, if not the best unit in the league. And the offense didn't score a touchdown until midway through the fourth quarter. Had to have it too, right? This was a game that was far too close for comfort. Look, teams are allowed hiccups this time of year. The Raiders have played well against the Broncos. They beat the Patriots way back in week 1. So on the other side, you think, look what Kansas City did to this team. Look what the Eagles did to the Raiders a few weeks ago. Surprising that they moved the ball as efficiently as they did, and surprising their offense couldn't come up with more answers. So willing to give them a pass, didn't drop them this week, but kind of holding my breath just a little bit on them.
Yeah, Texans Chargers on Saturday on NFL Network at SoFi Stadium right across from our studios. Should be a really good one. Packers dropped 3 spots. No Jordan Love in this game. What am I supposed to make of this team?
Hard to know, right? We got to figure out Jordan Love's status. Like you said earlier, I thought Malik Willis did enough to win, played a pretty good game. That fumbled exchange in overtime was obviously a tough blow, but think about all the things that had to happen for them to lose. Not only losing Love in this game, the Bears hitting field goals into the win, all that stuff, but the face mask on 3rd and 20, the onsides kick, the bomb at the end of the game, right? I had to hit on every single one of them. So certainly some bad luck involved. The Packers looked like the better team for the first 55 minutes of this game, whatever it was. But reminiscent of that playoff loss several years ago in Seattle, now we need to find out more on Love, and we need to find out if they're locked in, if they're going to be able to be in this playoff field and be any kind of force and possibly win a game. All the questions we had about them were, hey, could this be a Super Bowl team a few weeks ago? Now the question is, do they have any kind of playoff legs whatsoever? I'm still asking that right now after in kind of an unknown status at this moment.
Yeah, they get a Ravens team, so it's 2 injured quarterbacks. We'll talk about Baltimore coming up in just a minute with Lamar Jackson and that back injury. But we got a Steelers team that, quite frankly, Eric, I think they deserve to win this division, especially with their recent play.
I do too. Yeah, wild game in Detroit. Obviously, it took a couple of calls at the end of the game that went in their favor. But when you saw the running back duo of Kenneth Gainwell and Jalen Warren, both guys were outstanding. They got the safety here. The blitz was really working defensively, really took out the Lions' run game. So they did a lot of good things. Obviously a little too close for comfort there at the end. They're going to have to sharpen up a little bit in some of the situational ball. But, Aaron Rodgers had played a clean game. He's been mostly very good this season. I think you have to give him their praise for being not only rallying from all the fire Tomlin chants we heard a couple weeks ago, but just playing better football than what the Ravens have since then. So, Kenneth Gainwell, I don't know if you can understate how big a play that was at the end of the half there, and what a play. I mean, he's got wide receiver hands and running back skills. So, 2 weapons in the backfield heading into the playoffs. That's a pretty good thing to have right now.
Yeah, the Steelers, they're on the road. They get a Cleveland Browns team where Myles Garrett is just licking his chops right now, staring down a sack record. Aaron Rodgers could be on the wrong side of that one. Time for Power Moves. It is presented by Energizer. Eric, I want to focus in on team number 14, the Panthers. On your rankings, they move up 4 spots. Let's just say there's a world that exists where they find a way to go and win this division. They good enough to get a win in the postseason?
Absolutely. I mean, look, if you see them at their worst, you'd say no. But if you see them in games like this where they really played good, solid football at the right times, end of the both halves, they were very good. This touchdown kind of helped get them back in it. Ted McMillan had been a little bit quiet lately. Bryce Young, he's been terrific. And 6 game-winning drives in the fourth quarter this season, 12 for his career now. So he's starting to kind of develop a reputation as a closer, as a guy who can, come through in the clutch and play better than maybe his stats would indicate. And then the defense with the have to have a turnover at the end of the game. Lathan Ransom was sort of the GOAT last week against New Orleans with that penalty, ends up being the hero this week. So it's been a wild ride at this point. They still have that Week 18 game looming, a lot to figure out still, but Carolina landed the first blow, and we're seeing this Tampa team really kind of struggle lately. So I think you have to think the momentum's on their side, even if, some of the metrics end up favoring Tampa just slightly.
Ginormous matchup for Carolina as they take on Seattle. Boy, that would be another statement win. They already got one against the Rams, by the way, and a win against the Packers in Green Bay earlier this season. The Lions at 15, I look, they're the walking wounded on the defensive side. That, to me, is explaining some of these issues that we are seeing.
Yeah, 2 years in a row, we've seen that side of the ball really crippled by injuries, obviously. They tried their best. The run game got taken away. Jahmyr Gibbs was having a rough time as a runner. They threw the ball pretty efficiently. And then these wild plays at the end, that's the spirit of the Lions that we've seen the last 3+ years, but wasn't enough for victory. They all the numbers suggest they should be better than they are right now. Obviously, they've had all these one-score losses since the bye has really crippled them. Back-to-back losses for the first time in a couple years now. That's pretty incredible. Speaks to their efficientness the last couple years. But boy, it's been a struggle rate lately, and this is the kind of game that they've been losing. So I don't think their Super Bowl window is closed. If we're talking about 2026, still think they can get back if they get a little more depth and a little more luck on the defensive side. But hard not to think they missed that opportunity a couple years ago in the NFC Championship game, up 24-7, looking pretty good, unable to win that game. It's been a little bit of a decline since then, and a lot more heartbreak.
Yeah, I think the same can be said. By the way, we'll see Lions and Vikings on Christmas Day. I think the same could be said, though, for the team behind them, and that is the Baltimore Ravens. This season couldn't have gone worse for them. I don't think they're getting into the playoffs right now. Lamar Jackson has got the back injury as well. We'll see what his status is going to be for Saturday's game against the Packers. But are you ready to stick a fork in them?
You need a Christmas miracle, I think, at this point to get in. So season's not over, but it's feeling that way. And doesn't sound too serious for Lamar, but just another injury to add to the list. And you start thinking about long-term longevity. You start thinking about, is John Harbaugh going to be here next year? All these questions. Pretty emblematic loss, I think, of the season. Promising, but never quite how you imagined it would turn out in the end.
Meanwhile, when we're talking about postseason positioning, Baltimore is going to be a little bit of tough sledding to go and find that spot from a Tampa Bay Bucs perspective. I know we talked about the Carolina Panthers, but coming up on Power Rankings, we'll show you exactly where the Bucs sit and do they make the postseason. My Lord, they had a completely healthy wide receiving core. Sort of felt like things would start to take off for them for the last few weeks, but offensively, there have been some struggles. Eric will try to solve some of those issues. Well, back here on Power Rankings, check in on team number 17 through 24, the Colts. Man, Phillip Rivers is looking like a superhero out there. I still can't believe at 44 he's looked this good after not playing for 5 years, but they did drop that game against the San Francisco 49ers on Monday night. The Bucs at 18, we'll talk about them in a second. The Vikings at 19, the Dallas Cowboys. Valiant effort in a loss at 20. We got the Chiefs at 21. The Falcons at 22. Bengals at 23. And the New Orleans Saints at number 24. The Bucs, they a playoff team or not?
I mean, they can take care of business in week 18 and make this thing clean. Obviously can't afford a loss in Miami this coming week, but what have we seen from the Bucs in the last, really since the bye? The Patriots and Bills losses kind of exposed some things, and defensively, and Baker Mayfield has not played his best ball. The offensive line is an issue. Run game, they don't always stick with it. So right now, I'm thinking it's Carolina, just based on what we saw Sunday and what we've seen the last month and a half. So, Baker's play has tailed off, and I think he should be called out for it. It's not all on him, but, he's the guy that makes this thing happen. All those comebacks early this year. I don't think it's going to be in the cards down the stretch.
Yeah, we talked about him as a potential MVP week 6, 7 or so, and it just has gone the complete opposite way, especially when you consider some of these wide receivers coming back healthy. I thought it was going to turn in a positive direction for Todd Bowles' squad. Still an opportunity to get there. Rest of the rankings, the Miami Dolphins at 25, the Washington Commanders at 26, Arizona at 27. We got a Titan squad moving up 3 spots to 28. The Cleveland Browns, must-see television because of their defensive play, more specifically Myles Garrett. The Jets at 30, the Giants at 31. And we got the Raiders rounding things out at 32. Is there a world that exists where the G-Men get the #1 overall pick? The answer is yes. Enjoy the holidays.